every time I watch that, I realize that we need to update our pictures.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I've gained a considerable amount of weight. Had 15 extra pounds thrust into my life.
Yeah. Forget the freshman 15. It's just the life 15.
Yeah, it's the despair. The
Yeah.
despair.
I mean, Joey, we literally just did an episode on like the history of a food item.
Yeah.
Which, mind you, that actually inspired Kaylee to buy Louisiana long grain rice. She goes, I was listening to y'all's episode, and I'm like, you see what we did there?
Yep. Propaganda. It works.
Yep.
So we're not going to talk about red beans and rice tonight. Instead, we're going to talk about something very nice.
Yes.
Oh, that was good.
I see what you did there. Look, hey, you've been sticking around me too long.
But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk to a friend of mine, Kevin Hymel, who is a historian at Arlington National Cemetery. So he's having himself a busy little week right now. But he is also the author of Volume 1 and Volume 2 and an upcoming Volume 3 history of Patton's War, looking at kind of a military biography of George Patton throughout the Second World War. That makes him then the recipient of the award from the Army Historical Society and a finalist for the Gilder Lehrman History Award. So, I mean, we're talking big game here is what we're doing. A Home Brew History is no longer grabbing the chumps off the street. Not that we ever really were, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're the two chumps here.
But we're definitely out kicking our coverage. You know, look at our wives. It's all we do is outkick our coverage.
It's true.
Here we are.
Best part of us.
So I'm going to bring him on the stage now. Let's add Kevin into our little discussion. And
Da-da-da.
You ready? I got a little background for us. Bam. Oh,
whoa.
All you can see is you can barely make out what it is. But anyhow, I tried.
Yep. We're still learning. We're learning.
Yeah.
I know what that photograph is.
That's what I was hoping, was at least you would know. You know, I can always kick everybody out of the show and we can put it up there, but that just
not some chump off the street, you know. Come on.
No, not you. Not you. Not for Kevin. But Kevin, it's great to see you. It's been a couple months. We have Ways Fest. Yeah, it's been months now, right?
No, oh my God, you're right. That was in July.
Yeah.
Almost September.
Yeah.
I've had a busy life lately. I can't keep track of anything.
Well, yeah, you have been very, very busy. But we can't get into that. But let's talk about why we're here tonight. Because you've got some really exciting news that we're going to get to towards the very end of the show. But let's start with what we're going to talk about tonight. So what is it exactly that we're going to talk about? Who are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, first, I got to open my beer here and pour it into a glass. So we are going to talk about the Central Postal Battalion. And actually, this glass, boy, it looks really light now. So this mug was actually a going away gift from the Afghan study team that I was a part of at Fort Leavenworth. We wrote tactical histories of, platoon and company and battalion level histories for the U.S. Army. And once we won the war, they let go of our team. And so that was a departing gift, was that beer mug from my colonel. So, but let's talk about the 688 Central Postal Battalion. This is the only all-black, all-female WAC unit to go overseas in World War II. And what they did is they caught up a backlog of mail in England. These were letters that had been sent to GIs and for one reason or another could not be delivered. So soldiers who had been transferred, soldiers who were missing, soldiers that were in hospitals, and soldiers that had been killed, these packages and these letters would just get sent back to England and fill warehouse after warehouse after warehouse. And so soldiers are not getting their mail at the front. Families back home don't know the status of what's going on if they haven't received an MIA or KIA letter. And so this job is really vital to the war effort because along with beans and bullets, you got to have morale. And soldiers that aren't
You see the
hearing back
beans.
from friends and relatives back home, the morale's going to, bottom out basically. And so these women were given 6 months to get more than 3 warehouses of mail out the doors across the channel and delivered to those soldiers.
So, Kevin, how did you come across this seemingly very niche topic?
So I think it was about 2008. I was working for an Army program called Freedom Team Salute. Now, at that time, the Army wanted to do something to promote the people that supported the soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan because those soldiers would get medals for what they did. But what about the families that supported them, veterans who spoke to them, athletes and movie stars that would go over to war zones, and give their time to entertain those soldiers. So we would give them a certificate that they could frame thanking them. And so one day, this woman I worked with came to me and she said, "Hey, there's this unit, the 6888. I found 3 veterans and I want to honor them." And when she described what it is, I said, "Well, I want to interview them. I want to write a story," because that's what I did. I would write newsletters and stories for the program, and I'm an historian. That's what we do. We write. And so I interviewed this woman, Mary Ragland, and I found her fascinating. She lived in Northeast DC in a terrible neighborhood in bad conditions. Our veterans should have been living a lot better than that in the in 2000s. And as I was interviewing her, she started bringing me documents out of her closet. And I'm like, what am I looking at? And she goes, "Oh, well, I was a clerk. So I kept a lot of our battalion records." And I was like, "This is amazing." And so with my camera, because back then you had a camera and a cell phone, I took photographs of the documents. And then I went to the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. I said, "Guys, I want to see all the records on the 6888." And they said, "Yeah, there aren't any." And so I went back to Mary Ragland. I said, "Mary, you are the archives of the unit. You're the heart and soul of this unit." I interviewed 2 other women from the unit. I was able to write the story from that. We had a ceremony for them at the Women in Military History Center in Arlington, Virginia, right there at Arlington Cemetery. We all call it WIMSA. And that was it. I had done my piece and I had moved on. I mostly interviewed combat veterans from World War II. And it just life went on. And then I guess I was at Fort Leavenworth Afghan Study Team from 2011 to 2013. And I left and people started calling me up and saying, "Hey, there's this big poster out saying they're going to build a memorial to the 6888. Here's the phone number. You should call them." So I called this guy, Carlton Philpott, who was organizing the whole thing. And he said, "Yeah, we found 3 more veterans from the unit." And I said, "Well, give me one of them. I'll interview her. And that'll be a nice, little piece. We'll run it in WW2 History Magazine. It'll be a nice little tribute when the monument goes up." And so her name was Lena King. And I called her up and she was a pill. I had a great time talking to her. When I interview vets, it's usually 2 to 3 phone calls. First one is the big interview. It goes about an hour and a half. Then I write the story with all of its flaws. Then I call them back. We clear up the flaws. And then I'll send it to them for a last edit. I wouldn't publish anything without the vet seeing it. I'm not a journalist. I'm a historian. And, but with Lena, I think we talked 10 to 15 times. She would call me, or "Kevin, I just remembered something. Write this down." But I loved every second of it. She was an amazing woman. She's still at 94. She was still dancing every Saturday night and like making her own meals and everything. I loved this lady. And so the story came out, and I'll tell you a little caveat. When we were finishing up, I said, "Lena, I'm going to meet you at Fort Leavenworth at the dedication of this monument." And she said, "Kevin, I can't wait because to me, your voice sounds just like Dr. Lewis Henry Gates." And I'm like, "Oh my God,
you are
she
Skip
thinks I'm
Gates."
Black. And I'm like, "She is going to have a heart." And so, she was really free about people calling her the N-word during World War II and everything. I'm like, "Wow, this is cool," because she thought I was Black. And so saw her at the event. I said, Lena, it's me, Kevin Hymel, and it went from shock to smile, and so that was really nice. And then what happened is she says, I had contacted her through her niece or granddaughter. And she calls to the granddaughter and says, honey, it's Kevin Hymel. You got to meet Kevin Hymel. And there's about 100 people in this room, packed in this room. And this woman turned to me and she said, you're Kevin Hymel? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, that first article you wrote on the 6888, we used the language in that article to write the legislation for these women to get the Congressional Gold Medal.
Wow.
Her name was Edna Cummings. I said, Edna, there's nothing you could have told me to make me feel better than what I feel right now. And so to have a hand in that was the biggest thing at the time. But that's how it really, that's the origins and, kind of how I evolved. And as time went on, so Edna and Elizabeth Helms Fraser, they headed the 6888 Association. So, the children of the vets and everything, they would put on events. And they would call me up and they'd say, Kevin, we found another vet. And I'm like, do you want a black woman to interview her? I mean, you done? And they're like, nope, you're connected to the magazines. You're the writer. You know the history. You interview her. I said, okay. I definitely, at times I felt a little doppelganger, but it was something that I had been working on for years. They were asking me to do it. I'm happy to tell their story.
It's a great story. And it's great that you've become kind of the authority on it, in that, it's a strange thing to say, right? It's like, oh, what do you specialize in? Well, I specialize in this very obscure unit in the Second World War, and this is what I do. But what you've done is you get a chance to really put words out there that people will certainly read and hear, but it's putting words to the story that, as you mentioned, there is no file in the National Archives. There is no regimental history out there. So your interviews, your ability to get into their lives and talk with them is what keeps their story alive, and is what keeps the memory of them alive. So what I wanted to talk about is how the unit came to be. How did it? What was its origin?
Sure. So the U.S. Army realized that they had a manpower shortage and recruited women and black women. They mostly trained, this is all escaping me. I've been doing all this for so long. I want to say Fort Perry up in, I want to say Indiana. And the women at first, the black women and white women trained together before they started segregating them. And then they sent them out to all kind of different jobs, mostly administrative jobs. I talked to a woman who worked in Washington, D.C. in a Defense Department or War Department office. Lena King was sent out west to an Army Air Forces post where she recorded fuel consumption on aircraft and things like that. So, a lot of not exciting work, but work that had to be done. They needed smart people, intelligent people to get these jobs done. There were a lot of administrative work. And these ladies faced prejudice, at every level. One woman told me about a white woman that was always harassing her. I think she went to a bathroom in a stall and the woman poured water over the stall on her because she was black. Another woman told me that this white lieutenant's male, would never look at her during meetings. And she was just infuriated by this. And so when the 6888 stands up, when they say, you know what, we need a unit to go overseas, they didn't even know what the mission was at this point. And that woman who said the lieutenant would never look at her, when he found out she was leaving, he begged her to stay. You can treat people like dirt until you really need them. And she was like, no, you had your opportunity. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing stories about like the ladies would try to go shopping, different stores and they wouldn't be allowed in or had to go around back. And like, what do we mean go around back? Because a lot of them are from the North. They're not used to Jim Crow laws. However, the battalion commander, Charity Adams, she was from the Deep South. and she experienced the Ku Klux Klan doing a march by her house when she was a young girl. So she was aware of this stuff. She was a major in the U.S. Army when the unit gets stood up. She puts them through their training at Fort Oglethorpe in Georgia. And then she flies.
Yeah.
Okay. She flies to England to prepare for their arrival. And, it deals with slights of racism here and there as she goes through her paces, but she's out to prove that these women can tackle anything put at them. Just an amazing stalwart woman. She did write an autobiography. Her papers are at the Library of Congress, and I've had a number of conversations with her son. Are we still rolling? There we go. Did you guys go blank for a second?
We didn't hear any of that.
I'll take that as a no.
Oh, no, Kevin.
Pixel collection. The unit then said, okay, what's the last thing you heard?
We're talking about Charity Adams getting to England.
At the Library of Congress. And I actually, so Charity Adams goes to England, prepares England for the unit coming over. And so this is about February of 1945. So.
Oh, dear.
Kevin died.
Let's go.
Well, hold please for station identification. In the meantime, while Kevin works his way back to us, let's take just a brief commercial break. But B, perfect time to remind you that Home Brew History is brought to you by Civil War Trail. Civil War Trail is the world's largest outdoor museum. Be sure to get out there, take a signed selfie, and use the hashtag signed selfie and help promote the world's largest outdoor museum. You can see Civil War Trail's logo right up there in the right-hand corner. And for the first time, you can actually see this picture that I went through great pains to try and find. And now look at that, Kevin's back.
And now look at that.
That's just enough. That was just enough to remind people. Check out Civil War Trails. Visit their website. Check out the link in the show notes description and learn more about how you can support Drew and the gang. Welcome back, Kevin.
Hey, well, I was kind of tired of you guys, so I'd take a break from the show and you kind of wandered off there. Sorry about that. So what were we talking about with the Civil War Trails? I mean, what were we talking about with 6888? When did I disappear on you?
You disappeared when you were talking about Charity Adams getting to England.
Okay. So she's going to prepare, everybody for the 6888 coming over. The rest of the battalion, about 845 women, are going to come across on a ship. And a lot of these women had never been to sea before. I remember Mary Ragland telling me going up and looking around and seeing nothing but ocean and how much that scared her. But they're zigzagging, their way across, and a German U-boat is detected. And at one point, the ship's captain has to take evasive maneuvers, and it's throwing the women around. Later, a storm, basically, they run into a storm, and one of the women went up on deck. She said it was like being on a roller coaster, going up and down the waves, and she could see a small ship in the distance, and all the women are like, "You're crazy, get in here." But they're really, experiencing a war zone like any other World War II vet. They get into England. They set up camp in Birmingham, England, a very big industrial city. And it had been bombed during the Blitz. And the women told me as they were in trucks coming from the docks into, where they were going to set up their headquarters, that, they were told about like how the bodies were stacked like cordwood, and how so many buildings were destroyed, and they'd be taped off and would, signs saying unexploded bombs and things like that. It was very sobering. They were in a war zone. Now, obviously, the Blitz isn't going on anymore, but V1 and V2 rockets are still hitting England. And there's a number of cases where the women talk about hearing the buzz bombs with so the V1 rocket was called a buzz bomb, just for those who don't know, because it was a pilotless, basically airplane jet, and it had this engine, and when it would reach its target, the buzz would stop, and that's when everybody would freeze, because it means it's dropping to earth and it's going to explode somewhere. So that's what the women experience, the sound of the buzz bombs. They basically set up. Yep.
Kevin, what I appreciated about that is you made it possible that I wouldn't have to go and look up an audio clip of what a buzz bomb sounded like.
True.
We have the best sound effects right there.
Hey,
one-man show.
I'm a triple threat, guys. I write, I tell stories, I do noises. So the women walked into a schoolhouse. Clip, clop, clip. No, I'm not going to do any more sounds. And they basically renovated a schoolhouse for them to live in, and they even made a beauty parlor. They set up Charity Adams' office, and they are shown these warehouses full of mail and told, this is your job. And they went right to work. A lot of them they wore extra layers. It was so cold. This is February in England, and the windows are blacked out, and some of these are warehouses with no windows. So you can imagine how cold it is. I think one woman wore like a ski suit, and they said, but you had to have your fingers out to sort the mail. And, they just had to reorganize all this mail and get it out. They said a lot of the packages have been eaten through by rats. And they said some of the rats are as big as cats. And so they created a department to rewrap packages. And then they had all these lists of names with serial numbers so they could try to relocate where a lot of these soldiers were. And this is a battalion. So Charity Adams puts them into 3 shifts, rotating, in and out. And they work 7 days a week. And at one point, a general, and I've tried to find who this general is, and I cannot find who it is. He comes for an inspection, and Charity Adams falls out, 3 of the companies, and the general's inspecting them, and he goes, "Where's the 4th company?" And she said, "Well, sir, they're sleeping. They're on break, because they're on shift next." And he explodes in front of her, like basically in that picture. That's the way they would line up in front of their barracks and everything.
Oh no, Kevin's screen went off again. But if Kevin keeps talking, all is well. But another perfect time to remind you about Civil War trails.
How about
those trails? There he is. He's back. I'm going to buy you a wireless router for your office. Get you some new Wi-Fi there in DC. You there? There we go. Now we have Kevin. Kevin's here.
Stop kicking
Kevin's here.
Out
Kevin's
of
moving.
Show.
Kevin's talking. I'm trying not to. You're kicking yourself out. All right.
You keep
how about this?
Out of your show? I'm trying to be a good guest.
You've even made sound effects. You're doing great. You're doing great. The internet that's failing us. That's what it is. Normally, I'm glad for the first time mine's actually working.
All right, so what happened this time? Where was I when you kicked me out this time?
We were talking about the inspection. General explodes.
General explodes. All right, I'm still on. And he reprimands Charity Adams in front of her entire battalion and basically tells her, "I'm going to fire you and replace you with a white lieutenant." And Charity Adams, who had the utmost respect for military command and hierarchy, said, "Over my dead body." Now, we don't know what happened after that. All we know is the general came back a week later and apologized, and later offered to let her use his limo. So she was a valued asset that the Army really should have appreciated better. And I can tell you at one point, the Army created the YMCA would have canteens and things like that for the soldiers to go to. They had one for women, and the YMCA was so obliging that they built one for the black women. And so Charity Adams called the battalion out. She said, "I cannot tell you not to go there, but I will tell you that I'm not going there." and not a single one of those women stepped foot in the black YMCA canteen. So you can see the slights that they're facing. I went through Charity Adams' file. There were events where black soldiers would show up drunk at the front gate of this, where they were housed, wanting to see the women inside. Oh, hold on a second. Now it's telling me my computer isn't plugged in correctly. There we go. Did that do it? Yeah. So
lose Kevin again.
Yeah. What's the next thing we can face where my computer is going conflicted? All right, I think we're good. So so African American soldiers would show up drunk, looking for the women, and they'd have to send them away. And so all kinds of slights like that these women put up with. Now, I told you they were only given 6 months to do this job. They did it in 3. Okay? They start in February. They finish by May. Now, May, the war is over, but there are still millions of American soldiers in Europe who still need to get their mail. So even though the hostilities have ended, they send these women to France, to Rouen, and they catch the mail up there. Again, 6 months they're given. They do it in 3. And the ladies would tell me stories about how these French people, just super skinny, would come up to them begging for food. And so they would feed them from time to time. That they saw worse destruction than they saw in England. And at one point, now there's various versions of this story, but the one I had heard, I guess it was from Lena, that I kind of adhere to, is some soldiers came by in a 2.5 truck, a large truck, and they said, we need some of the women for a mission. So 3 women got into this truck. It headed out. It was driving along a cliff, and it slipped off and rolled down. According to Lena, one of the women was ejected and was found in a tree. This killed all 3 of those women. There may have been 4, but I'm pretty sure there were 3. And they're now buried in the Normandy cemetery that we all know of from the beginning of Saving Private Ryan. And I have taken people there to one of the graves. It's actually close to Teddy Roosevelt's grave. And so I usually take them to her grave first, and then to Teddy Roosevelt when entering the cemetery. And I'll tell you, the first time I ever decided to do that, I was with a tour guide who was older than me. He was a retired 1-star general. And I just leaned over. I said, hey, I want to take these guys to something that's a little different from what we're coming from, because we were coming off of Omaha Beach. And I said, just follow my lead. And I'm just hoping no one's going to be angry about this, because we're going from a place where all these young white men were killed. And here I'm going to talk about a black woman. And so when we came to her grave, I told the story of the 6888, how she came to be there. And I could see so many women in the crowd just tensioning their lower jaws, like, feeling like a solidarity. And when it was over, the older man turned to me and he goes, Kevin, you and I are cut from the same bolt of cloth. And I was so relieved. And throughout the rest of this tour, which is really about Patton, for another week and a half, people were coming up to me on that tour going, thank you for showing us her grave and telling us the story of the 6888. We had no idea. Should I keep going?
So, Kevin, I'm trying to imagine, if you're, spending months, years, in the European theater, and just some simple pleasures of home, like a piece of mail, man, how important is that to troop morale overall? And honestly, like you said, they're very effective at getting the job done. 6 months time given and 3 months done.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Yeah, talk about overestimating the power of these women. You can't even measure the importance of mail for morale. Guys finding out their fathers, finding out news about their families, getting the old local newspaper, giving them that feeling of home. I don't think I know anybody, any military historian, who hasn't read letters either from home or to home. And if you read enough GI letters for me, it's the Civil War to the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Usually what they always end the letters with is, write more. It's almost like a drug. The soldiers can't get enough of news from home. and a break from the horrors of combat or the mendacity of military life, you know? I have a feeling one of you is talking to me.
So I have thought about trying to. There he is. He's back. He's not leaving us again. We're gonna hang on to you.
I'm wondering if I have to hold my hands in a certain way to keep the screen from freezing. You know.
Hold the router up against the window. Apparently that'll work. So, Kevin, just as we sort of get towards the end of their story, what happens to the 688 when the war does come to an end and they are eventually kind of demobilized and sent back home?
So the women are actually this is the nice part of the story that I really like. Before they're sent to Camp Lucky Strike to get on a ship to go home, they're sent to Paris, and the officers are in one building, the enlisted ladies are in another, and these women, some of them are very highly educated. A lot of others come from poorer backgrounds, and so Mary Ragland, who I interviewed, definitely came from a poor background, and she said it was so amazing that back in the States, she had been a seamstress and did all these jobs, and now she's in a hotel where she has a chef making her meals. There's a concierge. A lot of them have never been in a sky rise before, and so they were just fascinated with the views and being treated like the heroes that they were. And so I hold that image very precious to me. I think that's a great, important image to have. And then they leave Paris. I think they get home about September of 1946. And there's no parades for them. There's no water cannons being fired in the bay. They basically get off those ships and continue their lives. And so when it came time for me to interview them, a lot of them were shocked and surprised that I was so interested in what they did. They're like, Kevin, that was just a part of my life. That was just a few years of my life. I went on and did things in the end of the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. I can't believe you're asking about this. They didn't go like, gosh, that was a great moment.
And that's the thing that always
being focused, but yeah, they never really got any recognition for their accomplishment and their pioneering accomplishment. They changed the face of the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army is a white male, and now it's a black woman, in uniform. And that's something that benefits our country and makes it so much better today because of those women working around the clock and tolerating stupidity and racism and sexism.
Yeah, and especially when you consider how their black male counterparts were received when they returned home. This is something you and I talked about.
Yeah, it was
based on my research that I'm working on, and you think about a man like Isaac Woodard, or
there's other stories too where they talk about when they got off the ship in France. And a black unit of men greets them, and it was that typical, "Hey, where are you from? Do you know this person?" And some of them had kind of knew each other, and so that was really nice. And they say that the men, before the women arrived in France, all these African American soldiers prepared their boarding houses and stuff where they stayed, and a lot of the guys short shrifted their sheets. You know what that is? Where instead of a sheet covering a bed, they would take the bottom of the sheet, tuck it in at the top, bring it down, and then fold it in half so the woman would get in to go to bed and, kind of get stuck there. And they said, that was just the men pranking us, and we all thought it was funny. There we are.
We froze for a second. Now we're all back. So, Bo, do you want to move into Boohickey?
Yeah.
Let's do Boohickey. Let's throw out some Boohickey.
Yes.
Boohickey away.
For the Boohickey when it comes to the 8th, What are we looking at? What's something that's sort of misconstrued or something you want to dispel about them?
All right, Boo, you got to ask that again real fast because you froze up.
Yeah, always. So when it comes to the 6888, what is something that you've come across that you want to dispel? Sort of a myth, something that is misconstrued, something that you think needs to be brought to light, etc. Like what's the boohickey?
So the boohickey here, when I interviewed Mary Raglan, and she showed me the records that she had kept, I rushed down to the National Archives and I said, show me everything on the 6888. And they said, we don't have anything on that unit at all. And unfortunately, I was not surprised by that. I have done a lot of research. I've done enough research on American Army units, and something about black units, they're always disappearing. I almost feel like it was a willful effort by white officers or white soldiers that did not want African Americans to get VA rights or even historical credit, that they were just throwing boxes over the bows of ships as those ships came back to the United States. I've seen this in black MP units, in service battalions, the 6888s, also at the archives. For every division, there is a photo album that the Army puts together, SCAs, Signal Corps albums. And so the 1st Infantry Division has like 7 or 8 of them, from World War II. And the 2 black divisions, I think it's the 92nd and 93rd, there's like 3 pictures in each one, And I can't help but feel there was a concerted effort to deny our African-American veterans their due credit, actively at the end of World War II. And I think it's despicable.
Yeah, that's a good enough boohickey right there.
Oh yeah.
So as we kind of wrap things up here, this is Homebrew History. We've done history. We're all 3 at our homes. So the one thing that's missing
is the brew.
Homebrew history. So we'll move into the old-fashioned, I think still the longest running, most successful category of the show.
Segment of the show.
So I am drinking Spotted Cow, the #1 brew of Wisconsin. I am told that if you say Spotted Cow in Wisconsin, people will know what you're talking about. It's not really the drink of the college student, but it is the preferred choice of alcoholics all over Wisconsin.
Well, for our one listener in Wisconsin. Our one listener in Wisconsin will be very pleased.
So I should say that
Bo, how about you?
One of my coworkers is from Wisconsin, and she was recently home and brought that. She's like, "You got to drink this," and I said, "Not in the car when I'm giving you a ride back from the airport." So I'm glad I saved it for the show.
He drank responsibly. See that? That's what you do, folks. That's what you got to do. How about you, Bo? What you got?
So I have this wonderful stout from Tin Roof called Quaker Oatmeal Stout. It is sludge-like, but you know what? It's actually not bad. It's got hints of maple and brown sugar. All you need is like 1.5, and you're absolutely schmeckled. Not bad.
I don't know if you can see on the face. I'm not impressed with that. That sounds difficult.
Come on.
It's not as bad as that Rasputin beer.
And dude, isn't it like 100,000 degrees in Louisiana right now? What are you doing drinking a stout beer?
It's almost September. It's cooling off.
No nonsense. Anyways, speaking of Louisiana beers, only the finest from Monroe, Louisiana, Flying Tiger, I say this with as much enthusiasm as if they actually sponsor the show.
Hit.
But they don't. But they could. Anyways, Flying Tiger, Men at Arms. It's an amber. Oh God, it's so good. This is probably my favorite from them. I'm going to be honest with you. Between the Flying Tiger, Men at Arms, and the Nashville Sounds Strawberry Lemonade, I've made my way through the summer pretty easily that way. I did try a really good cider the other day, though, at a new burger place that opened up in Franklin. And you know me, it's fall, it's cider time.
You know me.
You know? I basically live my life around ciders and sours.
There.
That's it. That's what I do now. That's my idea.
Life to live.
Anyways, I know that the connection has been spotty and that things have been difficult. But Kevin, it was just great to get to hear you talk about this unit that you're so attached to, and about these women who played such an important role in making sure that the men knew that they were still loved, and that they were fathers and they were sons, and they were appreciated. But now I hear tell that there's going to be a movie made about 688, and you had a little hand in that.
You're shocking me. No. So, yes, there's a movie coming out. December 3rd will be the Hollywood premiere, and then it'll premiere on Netflix on December 20th. Written, directed, and produced by my friend, well, I like to think of as my friend Tyler Perry. So what happened was, when Lena King's story was published, these two producers contacted me, Carlota Espinoza and Carrie Selig, and they said, we want to make a movie out of this. And I said, okay. No one's ever wanted to make a movie out of anything I've written before. And I don't know, 7 months, a year went by. And then they called me up and they said, Tyler Perry really likes it. He's going to be calling you. And I'm like, yeah, right. And 2 days later, Tyler Perry called. And we just got along like that. He's a really nice guy.
Right?
Say what?
When Tyler Perry likes your stuff, you're set, right?
Even his poor nephew likes your stuff. You're good because it's Tyler Perry's nephew. And so we talked every other day for months while he wrote the script, and he would call me and ask me technical questions about the Army and training and things like that. And I'll tell you a funny story about all this. At this stage of it, he called me one time, and I was at work, and I was racing to get a story done. But whenever Tyler Perry calls, I got to answer, and I basically run outside to take personal calls. So I run outside, and all I can think of in my mind is I've got to finish writing this story for work. And so I get outside, I say, TP, what's up, man? What can I do for you? And I will never get the first words out of his mouth. He said, Kevin, George Lucas saw a rough cut of the film, and he has some questions. And I'm like, George Lucas, Star Wars. So George Lucas knows my name. So anyways, yes, I did the whole writing process with Tyler. In some places I'm given a writing credit. I don't deserve it. Tyler did all the work. And then he made me a historical advisor to the movie. So not only did I get to fly out to Hollywood for the table read with Kerry Washington, but I also flew down to his studio in Georgia for 3 days on set, and was able to advise and tell things. I'll tell you two pieces of technical advice I gave that they did not take. I was actually calling before I flew down there because I knew we were going to be filming some after battle scenes in Italy. And I said, make sure they have condoms and they're on their rifles. That's how they kept the rain out of the rifle barrel in World War II. They would slip a condom over it. And I got down there and they're like, nobody has any condoms. And I'm like, oh. And so then they're filming a scene where the guys are coming off the battlefront. I'm like, wait. They, at least half of them should have cigarettes in their mouths. And somebody turned to me, the military advisor who'd done a lot of these before, and he said, Kevin, if we have cigarettes in their mouths, it's rated R. we're going to keep this PG. And that's how I learned. But now, having said that, I've seen the movie. Lena King has seen a rough cut. She got to see a rough cut of the movie before she passed away. And that's something that's very upsetting to me, is that she did not live to see the final production and all the adoration she deserved. And a lot of that was because of the pandemic. That shut down production all over Hollywood, all over the United States. So that always makes me feel a little sad. But I just got to say, guys, if this launches a whole new career where I'm making miniseries about Patton and movies about other things I've written, great. If this is the only movie that ever gets made of anything I've done, I'm still good with that. This has been such a cool experience, so much fun. Mm-hmm. There's always those friends that say, "Oh, ask for more money." I'm like, no, I got a lawyer. He did negotiations. Do you know how much they pay when they write, take one of your scripts? No. Well, I don't either. But I actually did interview a bunch of people, and they said, you're making more money than we've ever seen. So why do I get this gift in my lap and I'm going to complain? I'd rather just enjoy it and be joyful, help them wherever they need, and there's a movie coming out. And so millions of people are going to know about the 6888 because of some little $400 article I wrote in 2019. Can't beat it.
Yeah.
Truly.
Kevin, amazing. Great to have you on Home Brew History. We're going to do this again, and I'm going to buy you and ship you a brand new router for your internet so that we can make sure that we keep you the whole time and not just for a minute here and there. And I know it's all going to come out together, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be fine. So I'm not worried about that. I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie when it's out on Netflix here in just a couple months. It comes out the day after Hattie's birthday, so I know what she's watching for her first birthday.
I told Tyler to do that. Yeah, because of her birthday.
Yeah, that's what it was. Tyler got the hookup. Don't worry, Hattie. Uncle Kev's got you.
Happy birthday.
All right, Bo. I got nothing else to say. We should probably pitch Civil War Trails one more time. Yeah, just so you guys know that Home Brew History is brought to you by Civil War Trails.
Price is nice.
There it is, right there.
And maybe Tyler Perry. I don't know.
Who knows? Send this to Tyler.
Let's see. That's
right. But, dear listener, look forward to this one dropping, and then this is the last episode that comes out before we're going to hit that really, really steady stream of nothing but market garden content because someone is really sick about that operation. So we're going to have a whole slew of episodes about that, and then we'll be ready to get back into the saddle again once that Festivus has passed us. And we'll have a good time. Bo?
Yeah. I'm actually, I've started to shamelessly plug Homebrew History just about everywhere. And I'm really gearing up some people to listen to our Market Garden Week because that's going to be spectacular. I'm not giving it all away, but let's just say that Joey and I are going to be very laborious on Labor Day. We're going to be in the saddle for quite a while, and we're excited to share it all with you guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, gang, this was fun. Good times. Let's hit the goodbye music here. Let's see. Where's it at? Up and there.